Christian music's most talked about name, and possibly its most feared one. People have been afraid to dig too far into Forrest Frank. That is, until right now. Was this organic ministry, or is it engineered momentum? We've got marketing campaigns, parodies, lawsuits, controversies. All I know is the further I dig into this, the more complicated it seems to get. I've not really been a fan of Forrest Frank's career, but I've also not really been against him. This might surprise people because he seems to have a chokehold right now on the whole CCM industry. The thing is, when I've listened to his music, I just don't like it. At least, I didn't think so. This guy right now has more listeners than Drake. So I took a little bit of time to listen through his albums. And truthfully, what I found was pretty plain and vanilla. The other thing I've noticed is that his social media posts make me feel a little bit frustrated, but is that frustration actually merited from me? I kind of just wrote him off without doing any of my own research. Why do some people love him so much that it's scary, and some people hate him so much that it's scary? To understand these really polarizing reactions, I'm gonna have to start from the beginning. Okay, so Forrest Neal Frank was born in Fulshear, Texas in 1995 into a middle-class family that really didn't seem to have any music industry connections at all. His mom, Carol, from what I can find, was a registered nurse, has been a photographer, and was a co-worship leader at their church. Now, his grandmother also was kind of a children's music writer, and his mom has released some music as well, but it doesn't seem to be any sort of connection that would cause like nepotism as we would see it in the CCM industry. Nepotism is something that is running through the CCM world right now. You know, maybe your father or your mother was a huge CCM artist or some sort of producer, and so therefore you were able to get the connections you needed. I'm not even somebody who's really against nepotism in this sort of a situation, because if you have a connection, you have a connection, but it really doesn't seem like that's what's happening here. Now, Forrest's dad, Ronald, is the son of Dr. Neal Frank, who is a renowned meteorologist and speaker. He was the former head of the National Hurricane Center as well, and he spoke, I believe, at least one Billy Graham crusade in the past.
Thought and action. Oh yes, the action's there. You rob a bank, nobody has to tell you you've done something wrong. But what about my purpose in life? And what about my thought life?
Forrest actually uses a clip of this to start a lot of his shows. Now, would Forrest's grandfather be some sort of connection for him to explode the way he has? Not that I can find. That doesn't seem to make any sense. So I needed to dig more into who his dad is. When we start talking about Ronald, he is a hard person to figure out. Ron went to Westminster Christian School, which was a private preparatory school in Florida. And I was able to confirm this because Westminster actually shared a post about Forrest Frank, and they confirmed that Ron, in fact, did go there. Now, this school in 2025 costs anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000 a year and is considered pretty exclusive. And I believe, as far as I can tell, that track record has been there ever since Ron would have been in school. Now, I took that connection to Westminster, and I took his connection to Carroll, obviously, and I was able to locate an LLC that was filed at a beachside house. And that LLC's name was Another Address. So an LLC that has another property's address that is filed at a different address by the beach, I don't know what that means, so I did more digging. I talked with some people that are a little more in that world, and when we see an LLC that is set up this way, it is most of the time for property ownership or getting some legal separation. Now, that LLC, it was formed on 5/18/2023, and that property that the LLC is named after was sold for $320,000 on 5/22/2023. At this point, my belief about this is that Ron is property managing. Now, that could be the case. It could be there's more properties, but it's really hard to dig because of that separation that happens with the LLC. Now, through all of this digging, I was able to find another LLC that went through a name change according to the public information in 2018. Ron was on that paperwork titled The Manager, and with him was an email address that was associated with a website for an advising company. Now that website is dead now, but it is a clue. Through all of this mystery, I was able to come up with 2 theories as to what Ron might be doing. I think he could be an advisor. That seems more likely. A financial advisor probably, or a property management advisor. Maybe a little bit of both jobs. All I know is that this seems to be where a lot of money is circulating within the Frank family. And money's not a bad thing, but it does seem to foot the bill later on for Forrest's education. So no, not the same as music world nepotism, but maybe some sort of it in a career way. Now in early childhood, Forrest's life really seems to grow around music. And in the faith-based context. His mother again was a co-worship leader, and she taught him piano, teaching him worship songs and hymns according to some interviews that I read. It seems like the Franks were very involved in the local church, and that faith-based context would soon meet business instinct as we start moving towards Forrest School. During high school, Forrest became obsessed with beat making, and this obsession led him to buy his first machine micro device. Forrest then graduated from Houston Christian High School, which seems to be about $30,000 a year as a private school, which is a ton of money. Then Forrest went to the $63,000 a year Baylor University in Waco, Texas. Again, this money and status seems to keep showing up and has just left me a little bit more confused as I go. When I keep digging, I find way less than a normal person, but everything here requires money, and money just doesn't appear out of thin air. But maybe Forrest is an anomaly. He enrolled in Baylor University, majoring in business, and he participated in the professional selling program. This all includes classes around marketing, following trends, and of course, how to make money. I would assume that this and the advice of his dad, who seems pretty savvy at making money, would be invaluable when you're trying to start anything. Following his graduation in 2017, Forrest was able to land a job with Abbott Laboratories as a pharmaceutical sales representative. I think it's safe to say that Forrest was probably good at selling and marketing to land this. However, he did say that this time in his life was met with a lot of depression and feeling isolated.
Yeah, when I was living in Seattle, I lived on a houseboat.
Do you miss it?
No, I don't. Yeah,
No?
that was like, I didn't have any friends out there. I was working a corporate job, and I had to quit the corporate job to pursue the music.
I think we can all relate to that and understand how difficult this is. When you're isolated and far away from anybody that you know, life gets kind of difficult. But then a SoundCloud discovery takes us on a completely different path. So let's rewind a little bit back to Baylor. During this time, he discovered Colin Padalecki's music. Forrest was producing and creating things, and Colin was producing and creating things, and so they combined, and that's how we wind up with the group Surfaces. This project blended pop, hip-hop, jazz, and beach influences, and I'm so surprised how many people don't realize that Forrest was already in a really famous band before his Christian music. However, I can't help but notice that Colin and Forrest don't follow each other anymore on social media. And I think I know why. Their first album, Surf, gained a lot of organic traction, particularly their song 24/7 365. It racked up millions of streams, and it was completely grassroots. There was no label involvement here, just purely sales and marketing and a little bit of know-how. Colin's business experience and education from Texas A&M helped them manage their royalties and their negotiations. And then obviously Forrest's marketing and sales know-how clearly helped here too. I also would go out on a ledge and guess that the stability from Forrest's job financially helped fund some of this. The duo worked from apartments and dorm rooms and houseboats while Forrest was balancing his day job. But then the machine turns on. In January 2019, Surfaces releases the song Sunday Best. And it catches the attention of 10K Projects, which is Elliot Grange's independent label. Now, that label has major industry resources and funding through, you guessed it, family. Elliot is the son of Universal Music Group's CEO. From what I can find, 10K Projects funds a multi-million-dollar TikTok and viral campaign through Flighthouse, a viral campaigning marketing agency. Flighthouse is very Gen Z focused and known for being able to just make things happen. Basically, Flighthouse was hired by Surfaces to just make them go viral. They ran an influencer campaign, they made custom versions of the songs, they connected the song with different trends or punchlines to make them go even crazier. They specifically designed the 2019 rewind trend to use the Sunday Best song while people just showed highlights of their year. This trend alone generated hundreds of thousands of user videos. Now, once that trend slowed down, Flighthouse readjusted and made a new dance remix, as well as a challenge with it. And they started reaching out to other influencers, like Andreas Lopez of the Hype House, to create these dance challenges. This went crazy and generated like millions of videos and views. So let's be clear, this part is anything but organic growth. It's purely marketing and money. A lot of people have a hard time understanding this, but there's very rarely an artist that just simply goes viral with no marketing money just being poured in all the time. This campaign led to 20 million user-generated videos. It tripled Sunday Best play count, and it landed Surfaces on the Billboard Top Emerging Artists, all because of great funding and good connections to the industry. And this won't be the last time that we see this viral approach. But as the success rises, so does tension. Surfaces maintains momentum and then signs a co-publishing exclusive deal with Universal Music Group. Wonder how they got that meeting. Forrest kept making daily content, which was a practice he had done since college, and the duo continued to perform really well with a ton of industry support, while it seems like Forrest was contemplating going solo. In a few different interviews, I was able to find where Forrest said the first time he performed solo stuff was when he was asked to open for Surfaces at like a weird private wedding event.
Our band Surfaces got hired to do a private wedding, but they also wanted me to do my Christian music. It ended up not even being a wedding. I just sang karaoke over my beats.
Hilarious.
I start singing and I just like break down. I like fall to my knees. I'm just weeping.
Which probably was a little awkward for this strange wedding ceremony, but it seemed to point Forrest in the direction of where he wanted to go. It seemed like he was at his limit, but it would stir up a lot of trouble. Around 2024, the Surfaces are showing a few cracks because Forrest was feeling overwhelmed. In his interview with George Janko, Forrest revealed that there was a lawsuit of some sort that happened, some sort of dispute within that music relationship.
I don't even know if I can like legally say it was like lawsuit, crazy stuff.
What period?
Probably about a year ago. I was like stolen from and I should have sued. I totally should have sued. Someone did evil to me. 2 people sent me Genesis 50:20 and I just released it to the Lord without getting into the nitty-gritty that I don't even know if I'm able to talk about.
It seems to be from a lot of emotional distress and personal conflict going on, and from what a lot of people have said on Reddit and other things, Forrest just gave up the rights to the music. Forrest, I would assume, owned 50% of Surfaces. He would be taking money out of the pocket of Colin and money out of the pocket of those that would have toured with them. Forrest also said in that interview with George Janko and in numerous other ones that he feels like there's 2 sides of him.
Grind my face off and fully retired. I cannot mix the two. I'm too locked in on whatever I do. I just go as hard as I can. I don't have any off time.
This conflict, I'm sure, can lead to a lot of knee-jerk decisions, and we've got a few more of those coming up. This time does coincide with his time in Seattle, where he was super depressed and isolated, and then he says he received a prophetic word from God saying to do this. And Forrest uses this type of language a lot. This kind of makes me concerned, but should it? Forrest's first Christian hit was the song No Longer Bound with Holvey. Forrest gave all the credit to the fact that God had allowed a small grassroots independent artist to go so viral. But is Forrest a small grassroots viral artist if he also had major funding, all the industry connections that he could possibly want, and the time and ability to do all the marketing? I mean, how much money went into this viral success? I did some digging. So the initial investment and cost for No Longer Bound was around $10,000 for a video that got scrapped. This decision was made again because Forrest said that God directly spoke to him and told him to do this and to change. But again, what about all the people that were putting work into this, only to be rug pulled? I can't help but wonder if this is just a pattern now. There was also a No Longer Bound merchandise collection that came out with Proclamation Coalition, and people complained about how expensive the merch was, but t-shirts were about $35, hoodies were $40. It's not wildly out of line. However, it isn't the first time that we're gonna hear this complaint made. Forrest then had another song called Good Day come out. I'm about to have a good day. But first, he tested it in his private fan group called Treehouse. I wanted to know more about this Treehouse group, so I paid for it. It's through a website called grouped.com, and it costs members $9 a month. The way Grouped works is that you don't pay to start a group, but they will take a 10% cut of any revenue that's brought in through memberships. So I navigate to this site, and it's super inactive. You can interact with posts from Forrest and his team, check out 3 song tutorials that he posted at some point with commentary, and you can hear his old stuff that isn't readily available. In his first post, he said that he wanted to know what people wanted in the group so he could make an interactive for those that truly support him. And it's feeling like a dead group, honestly, when I look at it. I even left a post today asking how active it is and if it's worth the money. The last thing posted was about a year ago, where you could get early access to his tour tickets, which you also had to pay for, even though you were paying for the group fee. It kind of just feels like a group that you pay for so that you can get early access to pay for more. Not to mention that there was an exclusive album in there, but you had to pay an additional minimum of $3 to access the album, even though you were already paying $9 a month to be there. He has well over 8,000 members that I can see, and I would guess that most of them are paying $9 a month. So after Grouped takes their cut, he's bringing in, I would guess, $50,000 to $60,000 a month from his Treehouse group for basically posting nothing. And this is more than some people make in a year. But people are willing to pay for it, and apparently willing to also research how to call his mom. So yeah, the fans are really aggressive. I would even say that the Forrest Frank fans feel very similar to Swifties. They're very passionate about him always being right, and there almost seems to be nothing wrong that he can do, and they will hunt him down. Anyway, this launch of Good Day further cemented his success as a solo artist. In fact, he won and accepted a Dove Award for Best New Song, and he was topping the Billboard Christian charts.
I was down, but now I'm up. Forrest Frank, come on, my man.
I just want to say I feel so undeserving of this award. I actually was, I was curious if I was even going to come to an award show for Christian music.
But then the authenticity question starts to pop up. Because the Good Day campaign was the first time his marketing stuff really didn't sit okay with me. Is Forrest, in fact, Frank? Forrest always seemed to be posting and, he seemed authentic all of the time, but now there was this inauthentic persona that was taking over. I began to see reels where Forrest was sitting down and a stranger would sit down at the table with him, and Forrest would produce the song Good Day perfectly right there on the spot, impromptu, no questions asked, and cheer him up.
That's me. Take a seat.
That's me.
Take a seat. Check, check, check.
I'm about to have a good day. I'm about to have a good day. I'm about to have a good day. I needed that. Thank you, bro.
They would have thousands of likes and thousands of comments, people saying, praise the Lord, isn't this awesome, God is good. Or even ones where he was given random words and he was able to flawlessly work them into the song Good Day on the spot, impromptu. What?
Bro, what do these chords make you think of?
Good day.
What are 3 words that have to do with a good day to you?
Sun,
Sun, birds, I hear that.
God.
I'm about to have a good day. The God who made the universe words.
Which version of this song's creation is real? Why say it was a freestyle or an impromptu encouragement when it's not? This made me wonder where the line is between marketing and deceit, where impressionability and emotion just leads you to being manipulated more. Not to mention, Forrest has continued posting a lot. Many of the videos that blew up were the ones where Forrest had posted about a conviction or some sort of personal revelation. Oftentimes, it was kind of a controversial hot take.
There is an undoubtable surge right now for Christian music on iTunes.
Truth about Halloween.
This is where we start to see this whole divide with Forrest Frank. Those who absolutely adore him and those who are just completely annoyed by his presence. And with annoyance, controversy usually follows. The first controversy we see in Forrest's solo career is surrounding his production. Forrest seems to be using a lot of sampling from royalty-free sample libraries. In fact, one of his songs is just a pitch shifted down Drake sample.
God gave me the keys, so I'm logging in. Had to get off TikTok.
Now here's the original.
I will have a model wife. Yo, she's as hot as ice. Every time you see me.
In fact, one of his biggest songs is called Up. And pretty much the whole song is just pulled from a sample pack from a company called Splice, specifically a library called Latin Heat. Here's the Forrest song.
I was down, but now I'm up. Yeah, it's all God, this ain't no.
Here's Latin Heat. Now, there's nothing wrong with this. This is pretty common practice now to pull a sample from some other source. However, it does kind of feel like he implies that he's playing a lot of it in his marketing stuff, and it just kind of feels weird. But he did get in some heat with another producer. Forrest faced a lot of public criticism in 2023 from the Christian music producer Swoop, who said that Forrest was copying musical elements from him for Forrest's song No Longer Bound. Forrest's response was semi-dismissive, saying he had never heard of Swoop and never heard his music before. And a lot of industry experts did point out that it's not outright theft, but it did point out and highlight a problem within the Christian music world of copying and not crediting. Usually when something like this happens, people do some sort of an investigation for courtesy to just check in and verify that things aren't sampled. Forrest doesn't seem to do that in this situation, which is really strange because he was so affected by feeling stolen from during his time in Surfaces. Swoop did say he allegedly had a conversation with Forrest after this.
So they got on the phone, but Swoop says that they had a conversation. And he's like, yo, it didn't really go the way that I thought it was going to go. I believe there's some arrogance in there, but I'm trying to live this thing out the way that Christ would have me live it out.
This is really a case of he said, but I do find it odd that Forrest didn't take an approach of reconciliation with this. I also find it odd that there's no producer listed in the credits of this song, but there's a producer of Forrest Frank on every other song on the album. Forrest then got in more heat for collaborating with Elevation Rhythm, an arm of Stephen Furtick's pretty controversial Elevation Church in Charlotte, North Carolina.
I'm clapping. I'm praising. I feel like I just snorted cocaine or something. I'm so excited.
It sparked a lot of debates around theology and having discernment on who you work with. He just kind of dodged it. But then as we move forward, the fall happens and the internet lights up. So by mid-2025, Forrest's numbers had surpassed global megastars like Drake. Forrest revealed July 19th, 2025 that he had had an accident where he was skateboarding outside with his son. He fell and hit his back on the corner of some pavement and fractured his back in multiple places, according to what he said. Specifically vertebrae L3 and L4. He posted a video from bed saying that he was in immense pain, but this was followed by like a flurry of new social media content around his back.
One where he's being put in bed by his wife while pleading to God and praying, and then saying that people witnessed a miracle. Some people really thought it was a great video. Some others questioned it and said, did you set up a tripod before this just to show the struggle of getting in bed? Others didn't find a problem with that, saying that it was encouraging for people that are going through something like this. This brand of Christian content creation kind of reminds me of Jaywalker's worship on social media.
I believe in God our Father.
You can imagine someone taking the trouble to set up the phone and get the tripod and the right angle, and then going on their phone and editing this whole thing. It's just kind of disingenuous. It really does lead to the question, is it necessary to post everything on social media? But in a surprising twist, Forrest recovers super quickly, saying that people had witnessed a miracle and that God had miraculously healed his back, and that his x-rays were no longer showing any signs of a break. This was met with people praising the Lord and met again with criticism and complaint about it. Some said that the x-ray he showed of his L3 and L4 was in line with something that would normally heal in 3 to 4 weeks and that you could put some weight on. And others said that God had in fact miraculously healed him from this. Before that though, Forrest in bed says that God gave him the lyrics to a song called God's Got My Back.
God's got my back. Even when I fall or get attacked.
Many people that praised him in the comments and said that he was inspiring for doing this, and others said that they hated this song, it was cheesy, and just seemed like him cash grabbing off of a situation. Other artists and comedians started to actually parody the song.
Yeah, I'm standing on the only one who can save my soul.
Yeah. When life gave Forrest lemons, he made lemonade. Crowd is standing on the rock with a broken leg. This ain't a competition, but my injury is worse. I got stung by a bee and now my pinky hurts.
It hurts pretty bad, but I did write a CCM single about it. Let me know what you think. I broke my collarbone, but you never left me alone. You're closer than my phone.
Most of these were done in good fun, and people felt like they were funny, but there were criticisms of people saying, "Thou shalt not touch God's anointed," aka Forrest Frank. Again, it's kind of a Swiftie mentality. People are like, Forrest does no wrong. If you're criticizing him or even slightly parodying him, you're wrong. Forrest had reached a level of infallibility where people were like, you can't criticize him because God had deemed him worthy of having this level of success. But there was still one more parody to come.
A little trigger warning, but here's the video.
What's up, guys? I'm on the table getting a vasectomy.
Snip, season. But we stay winning.
Corey Asbury, the already controversial singer of Reckless Love, made a parody about him getting a vasectomy. I remember seeing this and thinking, man, that was pretty funny, but also someone should take Corey's phone privileges from him. Forrest at this point responded, and the heat was on.
For some reason, my algorithm sends it directly to me. I can totally understand the fact you guys are just having fun. You're probably not even really thinking that I'm gonna see it. I'll just say this. To everybody who's making these videos, I'm not telling you to stop.
I took that honey video down a few days ago and really wasn't going to even address it. Forrest reached out to me directly and let me know that he didn't think my video was funny and he took offense to it.
Matthew West deleted his Bee Sting video. Crowder ended up collaborating with Forrest. And Shama Moremo, well, he doubled down.
I broke my collarbone.
A lot of fans wanted Shama deplatformed because they were saying he wasn't a Christian for it. Forrest, in a reaction to the Corey Asbury video, explained that he just didn't find it funny, that this was one of the most traumatic things to ever happen to him. And so he just impromptu begins to write a song called Misunderstood.
Give me a second. Wow, that came out kind of heavy. Corey, I know that you're a deep songwriter. I think it would be really cool if we kind of tackled this subject together, if you're down to play ball. So I'm thinking I'm going to call it Misunderstood. Here it is.
Sometimes words hit you in the chest.
Corey quickly responds to Forrest Frank's response about this and apologizes and said that's not what he intended and that he felt misunderstood as well. So he writes a second verse to the song.
I saw your video, man. My phone has been absolutely blowing up, brother. If I were to write a verse on this, it would maybe be something like, sometimes words can cut so deep, it's hard to be kind when anger's all you've seen.
And through their back and forth interactions, they end up with a full song that they release on Forrest Frank's album, Child of God. But had they really written the song this way? Forrest made a post where he showed that he and Corey were already texting. In a Ruslan interview, Corey and Forrest reveal that Corey texted Forrest saying that he would take it down and that he was sorry. But then Forrest said that he wanted to do a public response to it. So Forrest makes the response video, sends it to Corey, and Corey says, I'm good for it. At this point, they start writing the song together, not necessarily as publicly as they showed. Again, it just leaves me wondering where the line is between marketing and manipulation and deceit, faking something to make it real. But this time it's shrouded in language of God. And again, I can't help but wonder if it makes him come across as infallible and above criticism to fans. If you speak against Forrest, are you speaking against God? As the dust was settling here, award season shows up. One of the biggest controversies is about to happen to Forrest, but let's rewind for a second. In 2024, he got recognized at the GMA Dove Awards, which is kind of like the Christian Grammy Awards. And this is where he won Pop Song of the Year for Good Day, but he also won Artist of the Year. However, in 2025, we get a complete curveball. On October 6th, he posted a video, which is the day before the Dove Awards even happened.
Christians, it's hard to know where the line in the sand is between being in the world and not of the world. I'm convicted personally that a line that I can draw is that I will not receive a trophy for something that is from Jesus and for Jesus. I have decided to take a stance of non-participation. I will not be attending the Doves or the Grammys.
This stance triggered a lot of responses. A lot of people praised his decisions, but a lot of people also felt really confused and hurt by this idea. In fact, I spoke with a lot of people that were at the Dove Awards. I tried my best to gather a general consensus of what was going on, but rumor is really hard to work with because it's not confirmed. As best as I could tell, he allegedly had told people he wasn't gonna make it. I even heard one rumor that he was saying he was sick, but that's super unconfirmed and kind of useless to me. But then like the day of the awards, he just drops this bomb, drops this video, and it blows up. And I'm betting it left the Gospel Music Association really confused. But to know that, I really need to dig into how the Dove Awards work.
Ladies and gentlemen, presenting the explanation of the Dove Awards, zero-time nominee, Jonathan Allen Wright.
Wow, it is such a privilege to be here presenting to you how the Dove Awards work and how the entire process happens. The Gospel Music Association, or the GMA, is a 501c3 nonprofit that its whole goal is to promote, the gospel music world and celebrate it. It does this through networking, different events just like tonight, and all sorts of other resources that they provide for artists, developers, and companies that want to be involved. Obviously, they host the Dove Awards. That's right, we're so thankful. And they also host worship nights and outreach opportunities and other things that they say is to promote gospel-centered community. You see, the Dove Awards are just a small part of what the GMA does, but how do they work? You see, Jeremy Riddle of Bethel and CCM fame, come on, he came online and he started backing Forrest up, saying that the way that these were awarded was not very Christian and that they were basing it off of numbers and sales and things that were way against the heart of Jesus. But is that true? Good thing I have a copy of the 2024 and 2025 Dove Procedures and Policies. Only certain parties can submit entries.
either a Dove registered entity or 3 or more professional members of the Gospel Music Association. There is a submission period, which is March through May, which then leads to a screening period. At this point, the screening committee then looks at the song and decides, is this song going to fall in place with our rules set up for the genres, the membership, and the release date? That then leads to a voting period. And you might be wondering, who's going to be voting for the GMA Awards? Well, it's members of the GMA. These are people like the industry professionals, the labels, the artists themselves, songwriters, anybody who has gone through the process of joining. You can apply to be a member on gospelmusic.com for $75 to $100. And that money doesn't just go to the Dove Awards. That's right. It also goes to other things like keeping the lights on at the GMA offices, keeping their maybe 20 to 30 employees employed, and it goes towards outreaches, all of these events, the workshops and things that they do to resource this community. At this point, it goes through a ballot process where it's first voting on the nominees themselves. Then it goes to who they think out of the nominees should win in a second ballot process. Now, some categories, they have to have a quantitative metric, things like Songwriter of the Year or Song of the Year. They have to measure impressions, streams, and if churches are using this song. So they use things like CCLI to find an actual number of impact. Now, is that necessarily bad if you're trying to find which song had the biggest impact and celebrate it? Maybe not, but a lot of people are very split on this thing. The thing that people maybe aren't thinking about tonight is that for Forrest to be nominated here, he had to have his music submitted through his label, which Forrest owns his label, which is a little confusing for everybody, I think. Not only that, but the way that the Dove Awards work, they wouldn't have just been able to hand it to a runner-up or give it to second place. I know. They would have to do the entire voting process over again. So I'm sure that this put the GMA board in an entire tailspin. Not only that, but I talked to a few people that were around the Dove Awards this year, and it seemed like the overall feeling was confusion and discouragement for the board and the people that were involved in planning this. It seems like they really do want to celebrate gospel music. There might be missteps along the way, but did Forrest consider how discouraging this would be to the community of people involved? The drama didn't stop there, though. At the 2025 Dove Awards, Jelly Roll and Brandon Lake performed their song, Hard Fought Hallelujah, and they were being rained on. People were saying it was a little bit extra or self-glorifying and prideful. I would agree with those stances. However, at their acceptance speech for Song of the Year, Jelly Roll took the opportunity to take a quick jab at Forrest Frank.
My son's watching this. I think this is awesome. He gets to watch an award show like this. I thank God that I could see the forest for the trees. God bless that.
And this wasn't the first jab he had taken. He was in Forrest's comments on his post about the Dove Awards, and he made a point that a lot of people were making. All through the comments, people were comparing Forrest to a guy named Keith Green. That's right, Keith is so well regarded and known in the early years of Christian music. He gave his music away, he gave his money and his time away, and he also made sure that his shows were free so that people could be there and hear the gospel. Now, is that the same thing that we are seeing with Forrest? It's a fair question. And Jelly Roll asked the question, if awards are off limits, is the money? Thank you. When Forrest says he doesn't want to receive something that's meant for Jesus, does that include an outrageous amount of money? People began pointing this out, his outrageous merch prices, including a $100 hoodie right here, and his ticket prices and more. So how much money does Forrest make, and what does he have to say about it? We also know that he makes money from his Treehouse group. I'd estimate maybe $50,000 to $60,000 a month with no activity. In fact, I left a comment asking if Forrest was active ever, and the only reply I really got was from somebody, and it kind of seemed like when someone thinks their dad who went to get milk 10 years ago is going to come back and see them. Using the tool vidIQ, I was able to actually look at his YouTube channel, and I'm able to see his average range a month. Not yearly, a month. Forrest gets an estimated 119.8 million monthly streams on just Spotify Premium members, and those streams pay about 0.003 to 0.005 cent per play. Free or ad-supported plays pays about 0.0004 cent to 0.001 cent. We find the average to be about 0.0035 cent. If we take that and multiply it by the amount of plays he is estimated to get just on Spotify, we wind up with about $420,000 a month from just Spotify. Of course, we all have expenses. He's got people he's got to pay, but generally that's an outrageous amount of money compared to the normal person. Looking at this, I think it's fair to ask him, if you can't accept an award or recognition and you are boldly telling people that, can you accept close to $1 million a month, maybe more, with a clear conscience? The great thing is that he responded to this, and we can expect full transparency like he's shown before, right? Right?
Well, I wasn't going to respond to this comment because I didn't want to bring any unnecessary drama. I posted my personal conviction. It triggered a lot of people. I had no idea that that was going to happen. So legally, that money comes to me. What I do with that money after it legally comes to me, I'm never going to tell anybody, because your left hand isn't supposed to know from your right hand. I might give 90% of my money away, I might give 10% of my money away, somewhere in between, but y'all are never going to know that, because that's my relationship with Jesus.
I find this video to be kind of a cop-out. He basically says, you don't know what I do with my money, and you won't know because I don't need to post about my convictions. However, he's made a practice of posting all of his convictions when it comes to leaving surfaces or the Dove Awards or things like Halloween or what he says God told him. It's just a really tough hurdle for me to move past. He could be giving all of this away, or he could be keeping it. We have no idea, because he's only transparent about the things that seem to bring the most attention, but not money. This is where I feel like the Keith Green comparison just doesn't fit, because Keith Green gave away his money, he gave away his time, and he even let people stay in his home. He didn't necessarily broadcast all of the information out there, but he was transparent and he got a lot of attention, a lot like Forrest does. But what happens when that attention doesn't necessarily go the way that you want it to go? On October 22nd, 2025, Forrest was brought into GCU for their Unite Us event as a surprise speaker. He was going to give a sermon, I'm assuming under some sort of speaking fee, but it's possible that he gave his time here. All I know is that quickly murmurs started getting out there and circulating about what happened here. I decided to put out an open call to let some of the GCU students connect with me so I could gain some insight into this, because Forrest actually made everyone put their phones away and not film.
He wants this to be all about Jesus. So put the phones away.
So that made footage hard to come by. Plus, I talked with a student who was willing to have their message read right here. They said, I saw Forrest speak at the Unite Us event, which was marketed as having a high-profile surprise speaker. Forrest was presented, came on stage, introduced himself, and spoke briefly about how his relationship with the Lord was one that came in a moment and flowed naturally, and he was going to wait on the Lord for the words to say. This led into an extended period of him kneeling on stage in silence, broken into occasionally by moments of prayer mingled with his testimony and advice he would give his son if he were in college. I'm going to pause here because Forrest's son is really young, and I do feel like it's kind of a large step to take. The moments of silence began to stretch on very long. I don't have a replay, but I would guess around 15 to 20 minutes of dead space overall. After one especially long period of silence, students started yelling questions from the crowd. All received somewhat repetitive answers from him that really had one point. That being, you're either all in or all out when it comes to your faith.
All my plans, I gave everything to Jesus. I laid everything at the altar. I said, you can have it all.
This is when people were asking a range of questions about putting God first as a public figure, staying strong through trials and tribulations, and how to deal with doubt. When I first read this, I thought, well, those are good points, but how would it leave the students to feel? Thankfully, we get a little insight into that. This made the answers come across as having very little practical application. While his responses were not necessarily wrong, combined with all the dead space in the talk and the dependence on students to start an unplanned Q&A, it felt pretty lazy and unprepared. Also, I do recall him mentioning when he first came on stage something along the lines of how he was just sitting backstage trying to come up with something to talk about. I'm not sure if this was meant to be a humble brag, but in my opinion, it did not come across well and added to the feeling that he may have forgotten he was supposed to speak on stage until 15 minutes ago. This account is backed up by every single person I was able to talk to from GCU. I can't help but feel frustrated by Forrest in this scenario, especially if he was making what his average speaking fee is. Why not have something prepared? Why ask people not to film? It clearly didn't go well with the people that spent their time and money to be there, and they didn't hear something that they considered valuable. If we look at God in the Bible, we don't see somebody who just doesn't prepare. This to me finalizes my theory on Forrest and his decision making. If we think back to the surfaces, the scrapped video idea with that team, the Corey and Forrest moment where he's asking people to take videos down about him, or even the Dove Awards and their whole GMA board process, I think Forrest gets overwhelmed and he wants to do the right thing, but he does it at the expense of not thinking about how it affects other people. Not to mention his lack of transparency on finances when he says everything he does is a ministry, while at the same time almost being overly transparent about his convictions when it gains attention online. There's a duality and a contradiction that I feel when I really look at it. Forrest loves making music that's popular, but he hates touring. Forrest loves marketing and sales, but he wants to be genuine too. Forrest says he doesn't really like the Christian music industry, but at the same time, he takes full advantage of it and pulls what feels like every penny from it. Potentially. We've got his authentic talent and drive, but partnered with inauthentic marketing. Transparency in some ways, but cloudiness in a lot of other ways. Forrest used private fan groups to gain traction and support, while at the same time using label-backed expertise in order to push songs into really huge markets. In other words, the question of is Forrest Frank might be harder to uncover than we want it to be, and really only time will tell us. Either way, I think we are seeing something important happen within the younger audiences. They want something authentic within the Christian music space, and they should be getting it. They want less industry, and they want to see God actually moving and changing things. Is that what we're seeing with Forrest, or is it just another manipulation and another level of marketing strategy? There's only one way to find out. Hello? Oh, yeah, no, we're cool. Guys, this is Forrest. He actually wants me to do a song with him, so we're good now.